Great. Julie. You're welcome. Hi, everyone. Hi, Doris. Hi, Sophia. Is that
Good
Deborah?
morning.
Deborah in sunny Miami. Deborah. And hi, Gail. Okay.
Good morning.
Good morning. So guys, just a request from someone on the Zoom, from our dear friend Doris. She wants to be a part of the conversation. So when other people are sharing, it's hard for her to hear. So since we don't have like a microphone going around.
What I do is when I change them.
Okay, so I'm going to try to repeat if someone has a question, but let's just be a little bit more mindful of that. I feel like I've never seen you without a mask, Lori.
Thank you.
You're so beautiful in real life. Wow. Wow. It's so nice to see everyone's faces. Yeah. Oh yeah, it was very frustrating. Okay. Yeah, that's fine. I mean, feel free to mask, to not mask. It's nice that we have that option now. So welcome everyone. We're going to be learning this book today. We're going to do a chapter in it, Everyday Holiness. But before I actually go there, because tomorrow or tonight, well, I don't know what time the fast starts, but tomorrow is the fast of Esther, Ta'anit Esther. And we did have 3 classes on Purim already. My husband did one, Rabbi David did one, I did one. We sent out recordings, so you guys have that. You could kind of brush up on your Purim because it is around the corner. It's happening. And before we moved on to our regular topic, I just wanted to know if there were any questions about Purim. Like, is everyone good to go? Good to go? Yes. Oh, the timing. Okay. Is it? What time?
Oh, no.
Yeah, I think so. It's not one of the major fasts. No, I think it is tomorrow, and it's probably I don't know, 4 or 5 in the morning, right? It's not a very long fast. Yeah. Okay. So there we have it. And honestly, like, we have, I think 5. Are there 5 fasts throughout the year? I think is it 5 or is it 6?
Okay.
I think 5. Yeah. 5 Jewish fasts. Yeah. Okay. So 6. Okay. Okay. I like that. Okay. You have to speak louder. Did you guys hear? Okay. Yom Kippur and Tisha B'Av. Yom Kippur is white. You dress in white. Tisha B'Av black because we're mourning. Boy and the girl. Gedalia, some Gedalia and Esther. Is that right? Sarah Batavia, the 10th of
And
Tavet.
that's the short one.
Okay.
So
That's so easy. So white, black, long, short, male, female. Okay. Amazing. Okay. But just for us, because not, I mean, fasting could be hard for some people, and especially if we're not used to it. So the only 2 fasts that are supposed to be, are known to be very severe or strict is Yom Kippur and Tisha B'Av. So I don't know if anyone is attempting to fast. My kids all think it's like a rite of passage for my kids. They're already fasting. Like they're so like calm down. They're like, even Shalom, who's 8, is like, I'm gonna fast for the first time. But yeah, we're gearing up for the fast. So we're stocking up on carbs right now. But okay, so we're gonna jump into our topic. So, and if there are any questions about Purim or anything over the next few days, you know where to find me. You could call me up. I'm here. I'm in it with you all. It's very exciting. Okay, so we're going to go to chapter 3 in the book. So we kind of did a bit of an overview and the introduction, which was 1 or 2 chapters. We spent a little time. Now we're going to delve into understanding the soul. Okay, this is so interesting. When we think of the soul, we think of one entity, right? Like a holistic, like what is, like describe your soul. Like what is it? It's such a weird thing. It's not an organ. Like it's not, we have so many parts of us, right? I'm looking at you, Sue. Like there's so much to you that I'm looking at, But the soul is not something that we even necessarily see so clearly. It's an essence, right? How do you put a word to it? Something that we can't see. How do we describe it? What is it? Right? So I know we're all like, I don't know. So let's just first just ask the question. If I would throw out a question to you, who are you? Or what are you? Right? You're saying soul because you know you've been learning for 20 years. But most people relate more to their body than to their soul. But there are many different ways of understanding. Oh, it's my husband from Israel. But I don't know. Could someone tell him that I'm teaching? Laura, could you unless it's urgent. He's getting on a plane soon. He's coming home. So I just want to make sure he's good. Okay. So some words of describing a soul. So one, how about like inner essence? Okay, so essence, and it's inner. So we're going to talk about that. Okay. Spiritual. These are all words. Spirit. I was looking for that. You know, Adrian Gold says the word spiritual is a compound word. Spirit plus ritual. Right? Like for all those people that are like sitting on top of a mountain, like, you know, meditating all day, that's really they might say and they claim to be spiritual beings, but there has to be ritual. You can't just be a spirit, right? That doesn't necessarily do it. So I like your words. Okay, so essence, spirit. It's here's another way to explain it. The soul is the offshoot of our identity. Okay, so let's talk about this. Let's bring it down a little bit more. Here are some words about us, right? We have a personality. We have our emotions, talents, desires, our conscious, our wisdom. Where do those words fall? Do those fall in body or in soul? Like you're right. We're so much of who we are is our brain, our what the way we think. That is a physical. That's housed in our physical body in an organ. But like, where does it fall? Does it fall in body or in soul? Right? I said personality. Like, let's just go one by one. Personality, is that more body or soul? Soul.
It is
Controlled by the brain, and the outcome is through the body, right? Like the outcome of our actions. But Rabbi Pliskin, Zelig Pliskin, he always says that it starts with our brain, it starts with our thoughts, and then it goes into our, thought? I can't remember I think there were 3 words that he used. It's like your thought or your feelings, your thoughts, and then your actions. Like that is, and that, so we think a lot of the things that we're doing are body driven. They come out in the body. But personality, emotions, talents, where would you put that? Is it a soul? Is it? It all manifests, right? But the inborn talent, is it like, where does that talent start? Is the talent that you are athletic, or is the talent, the seed of it, that you have endurance, that you have a drive? Like, where does it start? Think about it. If you have no drive, you're not going to get to be an athlete. You could take it in any direction, right? So it's just interesting to think about this. And then conscious, like, what is that? Our conscious, totally soul, right? Right. 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 It's I don't have an answer for this. I'm just saying, like, I'm putting out those, that's like one list. Here's another list. Okay, here's another list, and tell me where they fall. Our thoughts. Where are our thoughts? So it's housed in the brain. Maybe also felt in the heart, in physical limbs or physical organs, but thoughts are soul. Right? Right.
But
Right. So does that show clearly that it's not body? Your body can be shut down.
It's not
Right.
so distinct.
Right.
There's a lot of overlap.
Right. Totally. Totally. Yeah. Right. Right. Totally. That it could push us one way or the other, or it could kind of help us to determine what our thought process will be, the way that we were nurtured. Yeah. Right. Right. But it's interesting. So to play devil's advocate on what you're saying, because what you're saying is so spot on. But on the other side, to be successful nowadays, it takes more grit than talent. Right? Like really, if you like look at people in the world that are really making it big, it's not necessarily their education or their brilliance. It's the fact that they keep showing up and they keep at it and they're not letting down. So that's also like it really, the inner drive might even be more powerful than the actual inborn talent or trait. And I'm I don't have an answer. These are all great, great thoughts. And we have so many gifts. So the question is to determine like who's leading, who's the driver, right? Is the body the driver or is the soul the driver, right? Imagine a king that is being chauffeured. So the king is connected to the ego, right? Our egos are that king, the body. And yet, I think it's actually a little different. I think the king is actually the soul. That's the seat, the soul. And the valet driver, right, is the body, right?
Like a horse.
Yeah, like a horse and a driver, right? So another analogy that is really, I love this one, is the scuba suit. The scuba suit is the body for the soul. Like it totally covers the soul, right? Isn't that a great analogy? The scuba suit. So we have a body, we are a soul. Okay. Now let's bring this a little deeper, okay? Because now there's so many levels of this. There's the psychological dimensions. There is the mystical part of ourself. There's the spiritual part of ourself. Those are all soul dimensions. That means, so I gave like at least 15 words. The memory, logic, forgetting things, all of that, the ability to forget is also an element of our soul. God gave us the ability to forget certain things so that we could move on and we're not always in trauma, right? We would never have more than one kid if we didn't forget, right? That is a gift. And that is part of our soul, the conscious, the unconscious. It's all this is like the inner essence of a human being. Okay. So lots to say about the soul. Now, here's something new. There are 3 realms to the soul. Susie, do you know this? Do you know what they are? There's so there's the inner, the outer, and right. Yeah. Okay, good. But yeah, you're exactly where I'm heading. Okay. So everyone has a soul. We are a soul. We are completely soul. Everything about us is soul that we're going to talk about soon has many, many veils to it. And the soul, imagine the soul as a sun. This is a great analogy. The sun shines so brightly all the time. Our soul is always there, always shining, always present, always strong. Soul never gets tainted by sin. The neshama, the highest level of the soul, is called the neshama. The Hebrew word neshama has the word breath. Neshima is our breath. Why is it? Why is our soul called the breath? Who breathed our soul into us? God, right? God literally breathed the soul into man. And that highest level of soul, the neshama, is the spark of God. Okay? So what are the words? We say that we were created b'tselem Elohim, in the image and likeness of God. And God took his breath and breathed soul into man. We were literally like a vessel, an empty vessel that was lifeless, and God put the life back in us. And when we take it a step further, we know that every night that we go to sleep, God takes the soul, cleanses it. We're 1/60th dead when we're fast asleep. And then God breathes it back into us. So we wake up in the morning, we say, wow, thank you, Hashem, for that I'm alive. Because there was a touch of death. That's actually why we have a custom to wash our hands, netilat yadayim, in the morning, right? To watch the ritual washing and to say the blessing. Why? Because we touched impurity. We touched death. So we have to cleanse ourselves, like to purify our hands before we could go on and serve God. Right? If we have tuma is like impurity that we get from touching death. We need to cleanse ourselves. The custom of when we leave a cemetery, we wash our hands because we have been in a place with death, and death is the absence of life. And so we call it impurity, but the word impurity doesn't do justice because we can't understand. It's a very bad word. It's not a great translation, right? In Hebrew, we have tuma, which is we translate it as impurity, which doesn't do justice, and tahara is purity. And these are there. It's not bad or good. It's spiritual realities. It's not a bad thing or a good thing. It's literally just like the death has a veil to it. It's hard to really connect Hashem with that klipa, that covering of impurity. Okay, questions? Are you guys lost with this whole purity and impurity? Do you understand why those words don't do justice? Right? When we talk about being impure, it sounds like a negative thing. It's not a negative thing. It's a reality. We are all ritually impure right now. All of us, right? We've all come into contact with death. Until we have the temple, until we have the red heifer, we can't fully cleanse ourselves. We're not at the level. Kohanim keep themselves as pure as possible. My father, my brothers, they won't go into a cemetery. I told you guys about when my grandmother died recently, and my father was able to go into the cemetery. So I didn't. There was so much going on. It was a very emotional experience. My father was in the cemetery, eulogizing his mother, and then after the whole after the funeral was over, I saw my father kneeling down by her grave, and I literally thought he was going to fall into the hole. Like I was like, Dad, are you okay? Like I was like, why are you doing this in the dirt? And I realized what he was doing was he was kneeling down to kiss the grave of his father, because he hadn't been to visit his father since his father passed away 25, 30 years ago, and he'll never be back there, right? Because he's a priest, he's a Kohen from that. So you're only allowed to go for your closest relatives, your parents. God forbid for a child, right, which is unnatural, but you would be able to become impure for those, and for your wife, for your spouse, and that's it. Not your siblings, not your grandparents. I don't think your siblings. I'm not sure. Your Kohanim. So find out, Paula. Let's ask. So then if they went, then probably you're allowed to. It's only your closest of relatives, so probably your siblings. Not a sister-in-law, not a brother-in-law. And honestly, for my other grandmother, who was like a mother to my father also, right? He called her mom. I mean, his mother-in-law for so many years, almost 50 years, he couldn't go into the funeral. So he was on the outskirt of the cemetery, and we had like, a microphone so that he could hear, but he was behind the gate. For this idea of purity, of rich, so the Kohanim are meant to stay as pure as possible for service in the temple. So we don't have a temple now. So you would think, okay, what's the point, right? And really, as I just said, we're all ritually impure, right? But you could still uphold a certain level and keep yourself as pure as possible, because please God, we're supposed to live our lives with a bag packed at our front door, that the Messiah could come at any given moment, and we're going back to Israel, and that third temple is going to come straight out of the sky and plop right down. I feel bad for some people are not going to be so happy because you know where it's going right back down. Temple Mount. So, but it's actually, there's going to be world peace at that time. All the nations are going to say, I get it. I understand it. And there's going to be complete peace. I mean, exactly. So it's just going to be an amazing time of peace and everyone's going to serve together. So there's good times coming. Like, don't think that this is it. This cannot be it. There's total confusion and chaos in the world right now. And it's been in this way for a long time. Oh yeah. Yeah. So that's the purity, keeping your soul pure, even though, as I said, it's almost impossible. We don't know. If you walk into a hospital, you are basically becoming impure because there are dead bodies in that building, right? There is a morgue attached to the hospital. And if you're under the same building, so you're basically spiritually, we're all walking around ritually impure. Okay, and we don't have the red heifer to sprinkle in our water and drink it, and we don't have we cannot fully get pure until the holy temple comes. Yeah, Julie, sorry. Yeah. Good question. Would my dad not go to a hospital? So that's a really good question. In Israel, the hospitals will have a sign at the front entrance that says there's a warning, Kohanim should not come in the building right now because there is a dead body in the building. And then, then, I mean, of course. But I think I shared this, that when my brother first moved to Israel and they were having their second child, and I went with them to the hospital, right, with my sister-in-law. And it's a good thing I went because my brother missed the whole birth because he was standing outside waiting for them to say Kohanim could go in. So because there was that awareness in Israel, he knew he can't go in. So I helped my sister-in-law give birth. And then he came up shortly afterwards. I'm like, Mazel tov, it's a girl, right? But he missed that. But in America, he had a kid in Canada where they didn't have that. So obviously he went in. There's no awareness of that. But there's different levels. And obviously they're trying their hardest to uphold a very high standard of keeping themselves ready to serve at any given moment in the temple. Yeah. Okay. Baba Maisa. Yeah. Okay. That is okay. So for Doris, you want to hear what Julie said? Is it a Bubba Maisa that a pregnant woman cannot go to a cemetery? It's a custom. Yeah, it's a custom. It's not law. I've been before in my pregnancies, but I know that some people were like, no, you don't do that. It's not a Bubba Maisa. Yeah, but there is something, because you know what? I mean, I remember when I went to Poland a couple years ago, we were at this mass grave. By the way, the entire Poland is a cemetery. A Kohen, it would be my father's never gone because he couldn't go to the crematory, like he couldn't go into these places. There's ashes everywhere. You literally see bone fragments in some places on the floor. Right, you could be because the earth shifted and terrible. There's actually a story where a group went and I guess the earth had shifted and there were so many bones that were just coming out of the ground that the group actually got down on their hands and knees and they started digging and burying the bones, because that's a very big mitzvah. This is in Poland. Like most of the country is a big cemetery. So one time I was with a group and we were at a mass grave. And it was just a heart-wrenching place to be, and we're trying to process and we're saying some prayers there, and then we hear the sound of a little baby crying, and we look over there and there was a woman who was with another group of students, and she was on the outskirts of this kind of cemetery area. And on the way out, I said, like, you could have come in, like, it's okay that your baby was making noise, that it brought us so much comfort, like to hear a baby crying. And she told me, yeah, the reason I didn't go in is because my baby is a Kohen. So she was married to a Kohen, so she had to stay out with him at certain areas. So yeah, something, you just learned something new. Okay, it's very, very fascinating. There's also things that Kohen can and can't do, like can't marry a convert. There are a few things. Such a beautiful thing in connection to Purim. So my little board, my little Devar Torah about Hamantasan, there's a box of them over there. So you guys could enjoy a Hamantasan. Thank you, Laura, for schlepping out and getting a ticket along the way to get them. 2 tickets. Okay, so just enjoy every calorie. So the Hamantasan, right? We all know, what is the Hamantasan? Haman's hat, right? Which is like, I never liked that explanation. Like, why are we eating Haman's hat? Or some people say Haman's ears. Oznei Haman is what we call it in Hebrew. In Israel, we call it the ears of Haman. So why are we eating them? So Shira Smiles, a great teacher in Jerusalem, she says that it represents, there's another meaning to it. There's always deeper meanings. So she says that the 3 sides are the 3 types of Jews. If we look towards the male lineage of Judaism, we have Kohen, Levi, and Israel. Those are, and everyone is divided into those camps. If someone converts to Judaism, they fall in, I think they fall in the Israel camp. And then we have this lineage, and it's, no one is better or worse. It's the Kohanim had to serve in the temple, right? That was their lineage from Aaron the priest. And whether they held it up or didn't hold it up, that was up to them. My own family, aside from my father and my brothers, none of my first cousins have held up the Kohen status. They've married out of the religion. Once you marry out, you cannot hold that status anymore. If you marry a convert, you can't hold that status. There are certain things to hold it, and it could be too heavy for some people to hold. So you choose to keep that status. Otherwise, you could, there's Levi, which also served in a different way. I married a Levi, so I lost my Kohen status. I always say, like, I married down, but really I didn't, because I married Gadi and I totally married up. But as far as status, like when I had my checklist of like, I want to marry a guy that's like this and that, and he has to be rich and tall and good looking and all the things that, so kind of a joke. But on my checklist, I was a bas Kohen. It's the daughter of a Kohen, but on my list was, he has to be a Kohen. Until I met my husband and was like head over heels. I'm like, throw the list out the window, because like I'm getting something else over here. I'm always going to be a bas Kohen, but my kids are not. My kids are not. So it stops with me now. Anyways, how did we get on this topic? Oh, let me just finish the Hamantasan. So Shira Smile says the 3 sides of the Hamantasan represent the 3 types of Jews that make up the Jewish people, Kohen, Levi, and Israel. And the middle is always filled with something sweet, which is the soul of the Jew, the Pintele Yid. Isn't that so beautiful? That no matter what angle, no matter what side, no matter where you're coming in, it doesn't matter if you're the priest or the Levi or the Israel, we all have our parts to do. Like, in services, like let's say during, do you know what Birkat Kohanim is? So the blessing of the priests that we do, not always, but we, right? The duchening. Has everyone experienced duchening, right? It's when the priests, the Kohen, like the Kohanim, put their talit over them, hands up. They actually open their fingers in a certain way. We're not really supposed to do it except for the service, right? But it's kind of like that, just for teaching. Take off their shoes, and they face the people, like in the synagogue, face the people with their hands up, tallis over them, and they say these beautiful prayers for the people. And I mean, as a child of Kohen, this is like, there's nothing that I enjoy more than being in Birkas Kohanim. It is like, it brings me back. I mean, I'll tell you one beautiful memory. So my grandfather, my Zaidi Lipa, he died when he was 80 years old. He was pretty young. He was, he had a, it was a very, sudden death. Like he had a torn aorta, and he was gone a few days later. We had no time to prepare. That was in Miami. He was like running on the beach in Miami. And but the later years of his life, he suffered with Parkinson's, right? So towards the end, I mean, he didn't take medication for it. He didn't really want to, kind of slow his mind down, but he shook, right? Especially towards the last years. So the memory that I have that I always want to hold, I never want to forget this, and I want my kids to know this, was that he would come for the holidays. His son, my father, became an observant Jew and would go and do the duchening in synagogue, in our modern Orthodox synagogue. So my grandfather would come. He wasn't an observant man, but he was so proud to go up with his son and his grandsons and do the duchening. And the last year of his life, It was my grandmother and I and my mother and my sister. We're on the balcony in our shul in Toronto, and we're watching the four men, my two brothers, my father, and my grandfather. My grandfather couldn't hold his hands up because they were shaking so much. So my father and my brothers were holding his hands up under the same talus. It was such a beautiful, like we were all crying, and that was the last duchening that we had in our family with these three generations. So it was just really, really special. So that's a little bit of, I don't know how we got there, but let's go back to the soul. Okay, we were talking about purity and impurity, and that's how we got off on that tangent. But now we're going to go back to the levels and the layers of the soul. Okay, so important to know, our soul can never become unpure. No matter what we do, no matter if we do mitzvot or we sin, whatever we choose, the core of the soul, the neshama, which is the divinity of it, is pure and holy and cannot be tainted by sin. It's so important to know this. It's so important because that is the core. That is the core of who we are. It is goodness, it's purity, it's holiness, and it's so godly that it cannot be tainted. It cannot be stained. So that's the inner part, okay? That's the neshama. And I'm going to read you a beautiful poem that was written in the 11th century by Moshe Ibn Ezra. So one of the commentaries on the Torah. He says, in my body, he, capital H, God, he has kindled a lamp from his glory. It tells me of the paths of the wise. It is the light which shines in the days of youth and grows brighter in old age. So beautiful to know that, right? The opposite with the body. The body starts deteriorating. The soul gets brighter as we get older. Were it not derived from the mystery of his light, it would fail with my strength and my years. With it, I search out the chamber of wisdom, and I climb with no ladder to the garden of delights. So this was a beautiful, beautiful piece that was written such a long time ago, which is still so relevant to us, right? In a world where physicality is everything, right? I've never done it yet, but everyone's like, so have you started Botox? And I'll probably never do it in my life. But, everyone's like, when I turned 40, I remember my friend saying, I'll buy you your first Botox round. And so Adrienne Gold, she says, like when we do that, it's like rearranging the chairs on the Titanic. It's going down. Like you could try, but right? But it's a pleasant thought. But Paula, we know that our soul is eternal. Oh, really? Really? Wow, happy birthday. But especially in this group of ladies here, everyone here is elevated enough to know that as they get older, they get wiser, right? They get closer to Hashem. There's a certain, perspective that we have through our age, through our life, through the struggles that we've been through. So we're very, very blessed because we have that perspective. Whereas if we didn't have these teachings, these understandings about the soul and the afterlife, it would be pretty depressing. There's nothing after this. It's all over, right? There's a beautiful song. I'll send it on our chat. It's A Conversation in the Womb. Have you ever heard it? A.B. Rottenberg. And there's twins in a mother's womb. And they're saying it's all over. And forever I'm alone. Like it's just dark. And they're being born into the world and they think it's their death. And really it's just the beginning. That's the analogy for us. We think this world is it, but this is just we call it the prosdor, which is the hallway to the world to come. Our souls will forever and ever be here, right? This Jewish souls that were brought into the world, and how many Jewish souls are there? 600,000. So 600,000, and our souls are part of this number. And it's hard to understand, like, how is that possible, right? Divided up, you're saying? Yeah, it's hard to understand it, but there's this soul, the soul of the Jewish people, divided into 600,000 parts, and we have different parts of those 600,000. And that's why when someone great leaves this world, we have the ability of taking sparks of their soul into ours. Okay, it's such a powerful thing. With the 30 days after a person leaves this world, their parts of their neshama are there for the taking. That we could take a trait and say, I'm going to embody this trait now. I'm still able to work with it in this world. So it's just very, very powerful. So that's the soul. Okay, so we started with that, the inner core, the main part, the neshama. Okay, now we're going to the outer circle. Okay, so a little further away, a step away from the inner core is called the Ruach. Anyone know what that word means? Spirit. Okay, good. Ruach, like, oh, there's such good Ruach. It's like energy, spirit, like in camp. It's like, woo, you know, that's Ruach. Okay, so that's the energy, the spirit of life. Okay, and the words that we could associate with the Ruach are things like depression and ADD, and issues revolving around energy and consciousness. Those are part of the Ruach, of the spirit. It's one layer removed from the inner core. It does impact us in many, many ways. It's so close to us, but where does ADD and depression come from? Is that a body or soul? So it's soul, it's Ruach. It's that outer middle layer. And then we're going to take it one step further, okay? So do you remember what the third layer is? So we have neshama, ruach, and nephesh. Okay, good. So nephesh, I know, I'm like, oh, thank you, Hashem. Okay, because I forgot the word. So I'm like, Susie, help. Okay, just joking. Okay, so the nephesh. So nephesh is a word where we talk about nephesh. Sometimes we say the nephesh ha-bahamot. What's bahamot or behema? It's an animal. It's more of our animalistic side to us. The nephesh is it's most visible and accessible to us. So, okay, so I'm going to give you some traits. I'm going to give you some traits, and this is all nephesh. This is where Musar begins. Anger versus love. So that's our nephesh. Trust versus worry. Generosity, stinginess. Responsibility, laziness. Loving kindness, judgment. This is where all the work happens, right? There's not much we could touch our soul with. The neshama is pure and untouchable. And then the next level, the ruach, it is, if we have an ailment like depression, we could work very hard on it, but it's there. It's something that surrounds us. It is the energy that we bring into the world. We could work on it. We could medicate it. We could do lots of things to it, but it's also, there's a level of untouchable. But when we get a little bit further out, the nephesh is what we work with. It's the traits that we change throughout our lives. So this is the area of Musar. This is where Musar comes in. And the word that we describe for our traits, anybody know how we call, when we're talking about the books of Musar, we're talking about our character traits. So in Hebrew, the word for character traits are midot or midos, okay? I actually want to show you this book. I think I found where it is. Let me just grab it. It's like, did anyone get it? Someone asked me for the details. So this is one of my favorite books. Did you ever get this for your grandchildren? Oh my gosh. Of the Bad Midos Pirates. Okay, this is like the best book, and it's a Musar book. It's a Musar book, so it's rebuke. It looks like it's for kids because it's great animation, but I have poured over this book for hours and hours and hours. So I'm just going to show you such a cute, it's so cute. I raised my kids on this book. When their first words, like I would say to Shimshi when he was like 1 year old, I said, or like 1.5, I said, Shimshi, mad? And he would say, Mo. I would say, cruel, and he would say Carlos. Like, so they all had names, okay? So we had Chutzpah Dick, Hateful Henry, Cruel Carlos, Mad Mo, Worried Willie, and they're hysterical. Like you see this worried, can you guys see this? I mean, they're hysterical depictions of what someone with these traits would look like, right? jealous Jake, stingy Stan, flattery Frank, crooked Cal, lazy Larry, right? And there's a whole like 2 pages on each of these traits that show how it manifests itself. Like, what does it look like to be chutzpahdik? And then you see his family, and you see all the chutzpah. And what does it look like to be hateful? And they're terrible to each other. They're so unkind. So I'm just gonna fast forward. It's the best book ever. But what happens in the end? Because they go. So the storyline is. Remember, I told you about the original book. There's 3 books in the series. The original book is a bunch of Jews. They go on the Titanic, but it's called the Gaiva-tanic. Gaiva is haughtiness. They go on the Gaiva-tanic. They're all full of themselves. And there's so much Gaiva that the ship sinks. So they end up going on their little rowboats, their life-saving boats, and they go to the island of Tikkun Hamidos, okay, to fix their character traits. It's everything Musar. This is like brilliant. This is written by great giants. It's expensive. Oh, it is worth its weight in gold. Do you know how many of these books we have went through in my child's rearing years? We have gone through the books until they were ripped and we had to like buy them again. It's the best book. What did you say? Yeah, it's a great present. So what happens is, oh, Afikomen. Oh, great. Okay, so what happens to these bad pirates, these bad Midos pirates that they just have so much work to do on themselves. So they need to be humbled. They need to learn. They need to learn how to change their ways. Okay, so basically this is the flip, and this is exactly what we're talking about. This is the work of the Nephesh, to take a bad trait and to change it into a good trait. Hi, could I help you? No, thank you, not right now. Thank you so much. Good luck. So chutzpahdik, the chutzpah guy, turns into respectful Ruvain, okay? And hateful Henry, loving Label. Cruel Carlos, compassionate Carmi. Mad Mo is calm Kalman. Stingy Stan, generous Joseph. Crooked Cal, honest Abraham. They all switch. Because we all have, whatever bad trait we have a measure of the opposite trait. And if someone, let's say, for example, is a very calm person, they too have the trait of anger within them. We all have all the traits. And sometimes the traits serve us well, even a bad trait. Give me an example, Susie. A bad trait, jealousy. How could jealousy be used for the good?
Yes.
Advocate. Yes, excellent. Right. So let's say, so let's put that with like anger. If someone has a trait of anger, but when they watch the news, they can't take what's going on, so they stand up and make change, right? Or they call their, I don't know, they're like, they're out there, they're holding the, yes. So anger has that good part that it could push you towards creating change, tikkun olam. And jealousy, we spoke about this weeks and weeks ago when we spoke about jealousy. We said that the good part of jealousy is that it could push you to what? To do more. Jealousy there's a reason for it. It could be channeled slightly in a good way. It's all about balance. But in a good way, when we see someone that is doing so well in their life, if we feel a little jealous of it, we might want to pick up our socks and push forward. And the way that we describe it in Judaism is that when we have jealousy for kinot sofrim, like scribes, for learned people, that tarbe chochma, that will push you to gain more wisdom yourself. Yeah. Right. So you're right. And jealousy is such a negative trait, but there's a seed of it that could be productive, right? Like, oh wow, he got his life together, I'm going to get my life together. Like or he's leaving a Jewish legacy for his family. We spoke about it in generosity when we spoke about tzedakah. Why is it okay to have a name on a Torah ark or on a building? It's because it pushes people to say, I also want to be a giver. And we need those reminders. So it's a very worthy thing to kind of like put it out there, to say like, I'm doing something good in the world right now. It could have a ripple effect in a very positive way. Okay. But it's just important to know that we all have both sides of every trait. We have a measure of it. So back to the word for midot, for character. The word midah means measure. It actually means measure. So when we're working on our midos, when we're working on our character, we're basically working on the balance, the measure of how much, where we fall on this, what's the word, like continuum. That we all fall somewhere. Where are we going to fall? Which way are we tipping? Towards the good, towards the bad? And that's everything. It's a spiritual seesaw that we need to keep balanced. Okay, so let's just talk about this a little further in the ways of, okay, everyone, we all know, and sometimes we need other people to help us. We know what the negative parts of ourself is, right? Which we could call and label our tikkun, our fixing, what we really need to overcome in our life. And we also spend a lot of time trying to figure out what our purpose is. So we have tikkun and yi'ud, okay? Tikkun is a fixing and yi'ud is a purpose. And very often what could help us figure out what our purpose is by magnifying and really spending time trying to understand what our fixing is. Do you remember we spoke about this a few weeks ago and I asked Scotty, what's my thing that I need to work on? And he told me, right? And I didn't even agree with him, but really he was right. But sometimes you need someone else to, right? And it's really hard to change that. But okay, so here is a great analogy. When I lived in Israel, we lived on the corner of my street. I lived in Rechavia for 5 years, on the corner of Keren Kayemet LeYisrael and King George, which is like a very big intersection, right near the Great Synagogue. There was fencing that was put up, and there was construction there for a long time. And I used to, on the way back from university, I used to pass this corner walking home every single day. And on my way past it, I would always like just peek in the crack to see like, what are they doing there for so long? And I didn't know what the building was going to be, but what I saw was that they were digging so deep. There were so many floors. They were building this infrastructure underground that was so deep that I knew, without even knowing what it was, that this is going to be a massive building. Does that make sense? The deeper the foundation, the deeper we dig, the higher we could go, right? If you're just putting up a small house, I mean, you don't need to go so deep. But I knew that this is going to, and I can't wait to see it now, because last time I was there, it was still being built. It's been being built for so long, right? And they went so deep. So it's clearly going to be a building that will last forevermore. Okay, so that's an analogy to understand our traits. If we figure out what it is that our lacking is, what our chisaron is, what we're missing, something that we need to work on in our traits, we're tipped in the right direction to figure out what our purpose is. Okay? How is that so? Something that is very, very difficult for you, specifically for you, like it might not bother your friend, but for you, it makes you so upset. That might be showing you what's important to you. Okay? If something is really, really bothering you, maybe you have something of it in yourself, right? There's something that's very, it's important that you like dig here. Like there's something, if you're very angered by something, that means that there's something in it. Or if there's a trait that you say, I cannot do, chances are that your strength will grow out of overcoming that negative trait. Okay. So I'm trying to think of some examples. I don't know. Remember that story that I told you of the man that was very stingy? Like he was known as the miser, but really he was the most generous person. So I wonder if his trait was really stingy and he worked it out and he gave, but that was why, I mean, he was such a big giver, but it still came across as someone stingy, right? So I think like there are these like yin yang, there's two sides to every trait, right? And if we're lacking in one area, possibly we might want to entertain the fact that that is the potential for our greatest growth. Mhm. Oh, totally. Totally. Yeah, it's custom designed. Right. Right. It's like an obstacle course that God made just for you. Right. And the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, is also custom designed for you. So certain things that are really going to trip you up might be leading you towards what your tikkun, your rectification, what you need to do. Yeah, share it. Susie.
Much further. Like, how many has a quality?
Yeah.
that
Mm.
is like,
Mm. Mm. Work through. Mm. It could be. So then why is it so, like I'm saying, so why is it so relevant in the next lifetime? Like if they've worked it through in their previous soul's reincarnation. Oh, got it. Got it. Yeah. Here, let me.
Exactly.
Okay, let me read you a little bit. Just we have a few more minutes, and I just want to close up this chapter so that we're done with it. So just his words are really powerful over here. So I'm on page 19, about midway through, when he's talking about this Nephesh, this is where the work comes in. This is the realm of the soul that we could change with our character, okay? So the message is that each of us is endowed at birth with every one of the full range of the human traits, right? We have them all, the good and the bad. And what sets one person apart from another is not whether we have a certain trait, while someone else has a different one. It's not about what we have it all. But rather it's the degree or the measure of the traits that live in our souls. The angriest person, for example, has an excess of anger, but Musser insists that there must be some calm within that raging soul. And they say the same about the stingiest person still has at least a grain of generosity, and so on with all the traits. It's not whether we have the traits, all of us have them all, but rather what gives us our distinctive way of being in the world is where our traits are measured on the continuum. Nor shall we aspire to rid ourselves of certain traits, okay, so, which is new to me. I thought we were supposed to uproot negative traits, but he says, don't rid yourself of them. Each one has its role. Certain traits will exist in a too high an amount or too low a measure. That's where the work comes in. We don't need to uproot them. I don't know if it's possible to uproot a trait. It's part of you. But we need to balance it. Midot, midah. It's this balance, measure. That's the work. That's the spiritual curriculum for us. That's what he says. I love those words. This is our curriculum. This is our spiritual curriculum, to find balance within what we already have inside of us. We have all of it, the good and the bad. Now we need to find balance. Okay, so this is very, very difficult to do, because this neshama, as I described, is the sun that's so bright and pure and holy. And the bad traits, or the imbalance of traits, is what clouds the soul and the light of the soul. The neshama's light, that sun that's always radiant, is clouded by bad weather. We have thick clouds overhead. That's our bad balance of traits. And then the holy light of the soul that's always shining in our lives, it's hard to see it. We cannot see it because it's obstructed. The radiance, our radiance gets obstructed by this imbalance. And there's these veils that block our inner light. So a trait that tends toward the extreme at either end of the spectrum drops down a veil that blocks the inner light of our soul. Okay, so Rambam, Maimonides, his very strong teaching is always find the middle path. What they're saying here is any extremes is not good. Even the extreme of kindness can sometimes be off balance, right? Rigidity, you would think like, okay, like someone that's very rigid that gets things done, that's also, it's way off balance. We have to find that middle path, the balance, so that our sun, our radiance can shine, because either extreme drops down veils. Isn't it amazing? This is like so crazy powerful. So I'll just end the chapter, okay? So I'll just end the last paragraph over here. That he's talking about our inner map, okay? This is what he started with, actually. He calls it, so musar, which is our work of changing ourselves. So one, it's an inner map of our life. And two, it's the way that our body practices things to transform our inner ways. Does that make sense? Because we're such body-centered people. So we're using our body, because that's how that's how change actually manifests. We're using our body practices to transform our inner ways. So the way he ends this chapter, this map, so this inner map of life is very helpful for making sense of why you have the problems, the habits, the strengths, the weaknesses for all that you do. For this mapping, from this mapping emerges another way of defining musar. It's tikkun hamidot, hanefesh. It's the fixing of your character, of your soul, the nephesh, that outer layer of the soul that we could actually change. By the way, this element of the soul can be tainted by sin. The inner core cannot be, the outer soul can be. Okay, so this is the more animalistic soul. Okay, and literally he says, rectifying the turnings of the soul. Isn't that amazing? So this is the work, the way he just defined it, that tikkun hamito, changing your character, is rectifying the turnings of your soul. This is where the change happens. Here is your spiritual curriculum. Here is the way of the soul. That's how he ends this first chapter on the soul. Yeah. Right. So amazing. So what Dana just said, for Doris, if you didn't hear, is that it's so comforting to know that the soul, with all of these layers to it, was custom designed for you. And we have to remind ourselves all the time. And when we wake up in the morning and we say, thank you, I'm so grateful, God, for bringing the soul back into me, right? But then the next layer of prayers is Elokai Neshama, God, the soul that you gave me is pure. You created it, you fashioned it, and you blew it into me, and you watch over it within me. And one day you'll take it from me, right? And that's when we say, like, well, all we could do in this earth is to do our job, to do our, right? What do we say? Well, Danny, how does that prayer end? That's when we that's when we end it by saying God is we actually end it by talking about the resurrection of the dead. That's how we end that prayer. We're basically talking about this soul being eternal, that even after this life is over, God is going to take my soul and it's gonna go into someone else's body. Like bodies come and go, right? Like, yeah, that's how the prayer ends. So it's really, if we just like woke ourselves up, that's honestly when I've shared with you guys, like when I got involved with the Chaber Kadisha, everything that I've been learning, everything that I've been, I don't know, hearing, studying all my life made complete sense. It was like you can never go back after that experience. You're literally seeing and holding a beautiful body that was without life, without the soul. It's just an empty vessel. It's, like dead weight. It literally, it's heavy. There's nothing to it. It's just beautiful because it housed the soul. And that's why we treat it with so much respect. But the soul is, and you actually feel the soul. The soul is there because it's no longer, it's looking down, and the soul is on to the next journey, right? The body did its part, comes from the earth, right? Adam was from the Adamah, the earth. God fashioned Adam, and we're going to return to the earth. The body will be eaten by worms. It's nothing. It's a vessel to serve us for our 120-year journey in this world. But after that, the soul just, it has a whole mission that is for eternity. Yeah.
It's like the light. Like instant.
Right.
So.
Wow.
Also,
That's so true.
they're not. Right.
Right. Yeah. A lot of perspective. Yeah. And we're also blessed to have such a beautiful soul. I don't know. It's just like, I think that's the only lesson. It's almost like that prayer, Elokai Shema, tells me that there's no space in Judaism for low self-esteem. Like, how could you not believe in yourself? God believes in you every day. He says, I'm putting it back in you. I'm giving you another run. Have a great day. Do some good things out there for me, right? Like, how could we say, oh, I can't do it? Like, we cannot afford that. Another thing I thought about when we were talking about that continuum, that spectrum of like, and that the balance of traits, some good, some bad. So one of the worst traits is gaiva, is ego, right? Kavod, that desire for kavod, which we spoke about last week with Haman, Achashverosh, Vashti. It was all to get power. That was their obsession. Versus Mordechai and Esther that showed up with such humility. So the balance that we need to remind ourselves of all the time is that we have to walk in this world with both respect and honor for ourselves, enough in balance, and also humility. Those two pockets that I'm dust and ashes, I'm nothing, I'm nothing, who am I? And the whole world was created for me. I could create change in the world. And we need to walk that, like that, I like the seesaw, right? To stand on that seesaw and balance all the time of like, I'm really powerful and I'm really not, all the time. To have those traits in check and in measure. Midot, measure. Okay. You're welcome. Happy Purim. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, totally. Guys, Purim. Let's just talk about Purim for a second. Oh, okay. Thank you. So, okay, two things real quick. So one, Purim, we're having Purim tomorrow night. It's tomorrow night, right? Tomorrow night is Megillah here. I'm sure you'll get there's emails, there's details on it. What time is it? 7:30 is Megillah reading. Okay, so that's tomorrow night. And then Thursday we're having a meal, a su'udah. If anyone needs help finding an organization that will donate money to the poor on the day of Purim, we can help you with that. We have direct links that will go literally directly to poor families in Israel or even in Chicago. There's so much, and that's a really important thing to do during that day. What? I mean, we could. If anyone needs help with that, I could hook you up. Oh, for sure. Yeah, if you want to give it. So, Julie, if Susie makes a check for L'chaim. Okay, so yeah, so the thing is, so Susie, Gadi will take care of it, and he's gonna be here tomorrow morning. He'll be here tomorrow morning. Fine, perfect. Okay, okay. What we'll probably do is make a direct transfer so that the money goes in on Purim. So you could, you know what I mean? Gadi will probably zell it, you know, just so it's directly there on Purim. That's the mitzvah of the day. The mitzvah is to give charity. It's one of the top mitzvahs of the day. And then the meal and the Megillah 2 times that we're having here, and then just all the festivities. So yeah, the thing is, like, I'd love to like send it directly to the poor, and we'll take care of it. Yeah, Gadi will be here tomorrow night, and he'll take care of it for you for sure. I think so. I think you should, but just don't forget. But yeah. I'm saying charity to the poor for tomorrow. Gadi will take care of it tomorrow night. I want to wait till Gadi decides which charity is the best one. Yeah. Well, yeah, sure. Yeah, we'll figure it out. Okay, so that's tomorrow night. Thursday night, everyone come to our concert. We have such a great concert at 8 o'clock. So you could come for the meal, but we need to know because we're ordering food today. So if you want to come for the meal, let us know. That's at 6. It's going to be not only a meal, but a whole experience, a whole Purim experience. If you were here, I think 2 weeks ago, I gave a class about Purim and the way that we do it with like a Seder of going through all the holidays of the year. It's a real experience. And with every holiday, we make a l'chaim, and there's like lots of fun. So if you want to come join us, it's going to be great. It's going to be here. And then after that, we're going to go into our entertainment, Ari Lesser. Your grandkids would love it. It's really, whoever wants to come, it's a free concert. Yeah, he's amazing. So that's one thing. And then Julie, was there one other thing? Oh, okay. One more. Okay. So the other thing is this. This coming Sunday, we have an industrial kitchen available to us, a kosher kitchen at Darchei Noah. And we are going to have a challah run where we're going to make like 60 challahs for challah hugs, one more rounds before Passover. And don't look at me like that, Sue. But if anybody wants to come for an hour, for half an hour, if you want to braid a little bit, if you want to help mixing, you could come. I could give you a time slot. Yeah, you could bring your kids. It doesn't only have to be daughters. You could bring, if you have a son that wants to braid, that's this Sunday after 1. I would say probably like 1:30. I would say, like, just till we get ourselves a little more organized. But Laura, if you want to come, you could be in touch with me, and I'll send you the details. But if anyone has experience or likes making challah, where it's going to be a lot of fun, and then we'll have a whole batch to give out between now and Pesach. We still have, by the way, if anyone wants this chicken soup, there's challah in the freezer. You can help yourself. And I think that's it for today. Yay! You're so welcome. Oh, you too. Will we see you?
Bye, everyone. Bye.
Bye, Doris. We miss you so much.
Miss you all, but love the learning. Thank you so much.
Thank you.